Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at John Hancock. And we're really going to try to go beyond the signature. I think most people know the name, but maybe not the whole story. So, to help us kind of get into all this, we have some great excerpts from an interview with Brooke Barbier, the author of King Hancock, The Radical Influence of a Moderate Founding Father.
It is fascinating how someone who was born into a family of ministers, destined for the pulpit, became a key figure in a revolution.
Right, like was he practicing those public speaking skills from the high chair or something? But seriously though, like his father's death when John was just 7, that really kind of changed the trajectory of his whole life.
Oh, absolutely. It was a
Yeah.
huge turning point.
Yeah.
And then enters his wealthy uncle, Thomas Hancock, who exposed young John to this world of luxury
Yeah.
and international trade, and even got him a dedicated calligraphy tutor.
Yeah.
Talk about foreshadowing, right?
Yeah.
This upbringing gave him a really unique perspective that blended this financial savvy with the aspirations of a budding nation.
Yeah. It's like he was being groomed for greatness, but not the kind that anyone was expecting. And it's not like he was just handed success. The guy was a shrewd businessman. Books, whale oil land speculation. He even dabbled in privateering.
Oh, yeah, privateers, that's a really interesting detail. It wasn't just about profit for them. It was a way for the colonists to challenge the British control over their trade. Remember, this was a time when the line between merchant and rebel was very blurred.
Totally. So here we have this successful merchant who's thriving under the British system. Makes you wonder what pushed him towards rebellion.
Well, you have to think of it this way. Hancock was walking a tightrope. He had a vested interest in maintaining stability. But he also saw the growing discontent among his fellow colonists. And the Stamp Act, that was a major turning point. It wasn't just the tax itself, it was the principle of being taxed without representation. That really struck a nerve, even among those who like Hancock, who were initially supportive of finding some sort of compromise with Britain.
Yeah. And then you have the Liberty incident, where customs officials seized Hancock's ship, ironically also named Liberty, for suspected smuggling. And this sparked like a full-blown riot, right?
Yeah, it did. And it highlights a really crucial point, that smuggling wasn't seen as a purely criminal act back then. Many colonists viewed it as a patriotic duty, a way to resist what they saw as unfair regulations. And by defending Hancock, they were making a statement.
Defending his right to smuggle, now that's a protest I can get behind.
Right. It's a fascinating window into the mindset of the era. And this is also when we see the rise of Hancock's nickname, King Hancock. Initially, it was an insult from British officers, but it was quickly adopted by the colonists as a symbol of resistance.
Wow, so the name that was supposed to mock him becomes like a rallying cry. That's amazing. But Hancock wasn't alone in this fight. He had a very complex relationship with another revolutionary figure, Samuel Adams. Didn't they butt heads quite a bit?
They did. They both supported the cause. But Adams was much more of a firebrand, constantly pushing for more radical action. Whereas Hancock, while committed to the cause, favored a more calculated and moderate approach. It reminds us that even within a revolution, you have these diverse viewpoints and strategies for how to achieve those goals.
It's like trying to herd cats, right? Everyone has their own idea of what freedom looks like and how to achieve it.
Exactly. And this tension that they had wasn't just theoretical. It played out in real time with real consequences. Think about the Boston Tea Party. Adams was right there in the thick of it. Whereas Hancock, while supportive of the act, didn't personally participate.
So even while they both wanted to break free from British rule, they had very different ideas about how to get there. Was their relationship more of a strategic alliance? Or was there some genuine respect and friendship there too?
That's a great question. I think it was a bit of both. They really needed each other, but their personalities and approaches often clashed. Makes you wonder how history might have unfolded if they hadn't found a way to work together despite those differences.
Yeah. And work together they did, at least for a time. But things really escalated when rumors spread that the British were planning to arrest both Hancock and Adams. That must have lit a fire under them.
It definitely raised the stakes. Yeah. Suddenly, it wasn't just about ideology or politics. It was about survival. It's no coincidence that this is when we see Paul Revere's famous ride to warn Hancock and Adams of the impending danger.
Like a scene straight out of a movie.
And what's even more interesting is Hancock's reaction when the British troops actually arrived in Lexington. His first instinct, grab his sword and fight back.
Hold on. The moderate, cautious Hancock was ready to draw steel.
It shows that beneath that polished exterior, Hancock had a fiery spirit. He wasn't just a calculating businessman. He was a man of action. when pushed to the brink.
It makes you wonder, was this the moment that he fully committed to the revolution, or was he still hoping for some kind of peaceful resolution?
That's a question we'll explore further as we delve deeper into Hancock's journey. But one thing is clear. The events at Lexington and Concord changed everything. For Hancock.
Hmm.
And for the colonies as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll pick up the story with Hancock facing a whole new set of challenges as the leader of the newly formed Continental Congress. Stay with us.
All right, so we've got Hancock, the complex mix of revolutionary fire and calculated moderation. Facing down British troops, it's kind of hard to imagine him leading the newly formed Continental Congress. How did that even happen? Well, remember, the delegates were a really diverse group. Some were eager for a clean break with England. Others were hesitant, even fearful of the potential consequences. They needed someone who could unify them. Someone with both, revolutionary credentials, but also the temperament to navigate those choppy waters.
So someone who could speak the language of both the radicals and the moderates, like a revolutionary translator?
Precisely. And Hancock fit the bill perfectly. His wealth and social standing calmed those anxieties among the more conservative delegates, while his support for those acts of defiance, like the Liberty Incident, that reassured those who were pushing for a more radical break from England.
So he was chosen not just for his ideals, but for his ability to bring people together, which is pretty crucial for any leader, don't you think?
Absolutely. And this wasn't just about symbolism. The Continental Congress had real work to do. They were essentially building a new government from scratch, while simultaneously waging a war against the most powerful empire in the world.
Talk about pressure. They were literally making it up as they went along with the fate of a nation hanging in the balance.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. And Hancock was right in the thick of it, moderating debates, making these crucial decisions, and keeping those communication channels open with the colonies and with General Washington.
So he wasn't just signing documents, he was coordinating an entire revolution. But I imagine there was still a lot of internal conflict within the Congress, right?
Definitely. You had all these passionate debates about everything from military strategy to the wording of the Declaration of Independence. Hancock played a key role in navigating those disagreements, ensuring that all voices were heard, even when he didn't personally agree with them.
So he was a consensus builder, someone who understood that compromise was essential to achieving their goals.
Exactly. And his role wasn't limited to just internal affairs either. He was also responsible for communicating with foreign powers, particularly France. Remember, the colonies needed allies if they were going to defeat Britain.
Ah, the French connection. They were pretty eager to stick it to their old rivals, weren't they?
They were, but they also needed to be convinced that the colonies were a worthwhile investment. Hancock played a key role in securing that French support, both diplomatically and financially. He even hosted the French Navy when they arrived in Boston Harbor, making sure that they felt welcome and appreciated.
Now, you mentioned the Declaration of Independence. We all know that iconic signature, but what is Hancock's actual role in its creation?
It's important to debunk a common myth here. There wasn't this grand simultaneous signing ceremony like you see in the movies. The signing process actually took place over several weeks, and Hancock, as president of the Congress, was the first to sign.
So he was the first to put his name on the line, knowing full well that if the revolution failed, he'd be at the top of the British hit list.
Exactly. It was an act of immense courage, a declaration not just of independence, but of defiance. And here's another interesting detail. The emphasis on Hancock's large signature is a later development.
Wait, so he wrote his name big so King George could read it without his spectacles. That's just a tall tale.
It's a good story. But the historical evidence suggests that the focus on the signature's size came much later, probably as a way to personalize and romanticize the revolution.
So it's less about historical accuracy and more about creating a lasting image.
Exactly. It's a reminder that history is always being interpreted and reinterpreted. But that shouldn't diminish the significance of Hancock's act. By signing that document, he was putting everything on the line for a cause he believed in.
And once independence was secured, Hancock didn't just rest on his laurels. He went back to business and eventually became governor of Massachusetts. Talk about a career change.
It shows that he was committed to public service even after the war was won. He understood that building a new nation was just as important as fighting for its freedom.
And he brought his unique blend of experience to the table. Remember, we talked about his role in colonial finance earlier. He didn't personally bankroll the revolution, but he understood how money and resources could be used strategically to support the cause.
Right, like his involvement with the French Navy. He also used his influence and connections to help stabilize the Massachusetts economy after the war, which was no small feat.
It seems like he was constantly adapting to the challenges of the moment, whether it was leading a rebellion, governing a state, or navigating that complex world of trade and finance. But what about his personal life? Was he married? Did he have children?
He did. He married Dorothy Quincy, a woman from a prominent Boston family, and they had 2 children together. Sadly, both children died young, which must have been a devastating loss for them.
It's a reminder that even amidst these grand historical events, people were still experiencing the joys and sorrows of everyday life. It adds a human dimension to these larger-than-life figures.
Absolutely. And speaking of human dimensions, we can't overlook the issue of slavery. Remember, this was a time when slavery was deeply entrenched in American society.
And Hancock was a wealthy merchant who benefited from that system. Did his views on slavery evolve at all?
They did, though, perhaps not as dramatically as some might hope. He eventually freed his slaves, which was a significant step, but he also expressed concerns about the potential economic and social consequences of widespread emancipation.
So he was grappling with the complexities of the issue, trying to reconcile his own personal beliefs with the realities of the time. It's a nuanced picture, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, and it's important to remember that historical figures were products of their time. We can judge them by our own modern standards. But it's also important to understand the context in which they lived.
So we've seen Hancock, the revolutionary leader, the savvy businessman, the governor, and the man grappling with these complex personal and societal issues. But his story isn't over yet. He played a crucial role in shaping the new nation in its early years, didn't he?
He did, and that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
So we left off with Hancock, back in Massachusetts, becoming governor. You'd think after leading a revolution, that would be a cakewalk.
Well, not quite. Remember, the newly formed United States was still finding its footing. The Articles of Confederation, that first attempt at a national government, had some serious weaknesses. There was a lot of debate about how much power the states should retain versus, the federal government.
So even after winning independence, there were still these major questions about how this new nation would actually function.
Exactly. And Hancock, with his experience in both business and government, had a lot to offer in those discussions. He was a strong advocate for states' rights, but he also recognized the need for a stronger national government to address things like interstate commerce and national defense.
Makes sense. You can't have a truly united nation if everyone's just doing their own thing.
Right, and this is where Hancock's role in the ratification of the U.S. Constitution becomes really important. Remember, the Constitution was a pretty radical departure from the Articles of Confederation. It proposed a much stronger federal government, which sparked a lot of debate and opposition.
So Hancock had to navigate yet another period of intense division and uncertainty.
He did, and he played a pivotal role in getting Massachusetts to ratify the Constitution. He understood the concerns of those who feared a powerful central government, but he also saw the potential benefits of a more unified nation.
Didn't he also use his influence to push for the inclusion of the Bill of Rights?
Yes, he did. That was a crucial turning point.
Yeah.
Many people, including Hancock, were hesitant to support the Constitution without those explicit guarantees of individual liberties. He used his political savvy to ensure that the Bill of Rights was included, which helped sway a lot of those skeptics to support ratification.
So he was instrumental in shaping the very document that defines our rights and freedoms as Americans. That's a legacy that continues to impact us even today.
Absolutely. It's a testament to Hancock's ability to bridge divides and find that common ground. He was a master of compromise, understanding that sometimes you have to give a little to get a lot.
He wasn't afraid to stand up for his beliefs, but he also knew how to work with people who held very different views. It's a skill we could all use a little more of these days, don't you think?
I think so. It's easy to get caught up in our own ideologies and kind of demonize those who disagree with us.
Yeah.
But Hancock's example shows that progress is often made through dialogue and compromise, and a willingness to find that common ground.
It's a reminder that even in a time of revolution, there's still room for, collaboration and finding solutions that benefit everyone. But let's not forget, Hancock wasn't without his flaws. He was a product of his time, and his views on certain issues like slavery were certainly complex.
That's true. While he eventually freed his own slaves, his stance on the broader issue of slavery was more nuanced. He expressed concerns about the potential economic and social upheaval that widespread emancipation might cause.
It's a reminder that even those who fight for freedom and equality can still be influenced by the prevailing attitudes of their era.
Exactly. And it challenges us to look at historical figures with a critical eye, acknowledging both their accomplishments and their limitations.
But even with those complexities, Hancock's legacy is undeniable. He played a key role in the birth of a nation, from his early acts of defiance to his leadership in the Continental Congress and his contributions to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights.
He was a visionary leader, a shrewd businessman, and a master negotiator. He understood the power of unity and the importance of compromise.
And let's not forget, he was a man of great courage, willing to risk everything for a cause that he believed in.
His story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, to strive for something better, to challenge the status quo, and to create a more just and equitable society.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from a young boy destined for the ministry to a revolutionary leader, a savvy politician, and a founding father. It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it's a reminder that history is not just about dates and facts. It's about the stories of real people who lived, loved, fought, and ultimately shaped the world that we live in today.
And John Hancock's story is one that deserves to be remembered and celebrated. So the next time you see that iconic signature, think about the man behind it. The man who risked everything for freedom, who navigated the turbulent waters of revolution, and who helped shape the very foundations of our nation.
His legacy continues to inspire us, reminding us that even in times of division and uncertainty, there's always hope for a brighter future.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. But before we go, I want to encourage all of you listening to learn more about John Hancock. Brooke Barbier's book, King Hancock, is a great place to start. It's a captivating read that provides a much deeper understanding of this complex and fascinating figure.
It's a story that will stay with you long after you finish that last page.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the stories that matter.